Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions, here to talk about Cobra Kai, Season 3, Episode 5, Miyagi-Do. It has been a while since I've touched upon this episode, and looking at the views and watch time from the previous videos I did on this series, I realized I should probably get to it, even though I was initially discouraged from doing so. So just so we're clear, going forward, this is a commentary video where I talk about the episode, not a full episode. That's not what I do here. But anyway, I am going to try to fulfill my commitment to do Cobra Kai Season 3, even with all that I have on my plate, with the This Is Us Rewatch videos, as well as the Quantum Leap videos that I just started doing. The episode's description reads as follows. In Okinawa, Daniel spends time with an old friend and an old enemy who has much to teach him. The dueling dojo's rivalry comes to a nasty head. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. 1. This is not a spoiler-free dojo, so if you haven't yet watched this episode, please go and check it out and then come back watch my video. Secondly, if you like this video, please like, share, and comment on it, as well as subscribing to my channel. This episode right here is probably my favorite of the season. I even enjoyed Robbie's arc in this, and it's not really because of Robbie. I've pretty much been dunking on Tanner Buchanan all season long, because I felt like this arc just does not do him any favors. It doesn't play to his strengths as an actor. He doesn't do well as the bad boy, which is who he was supposed to be at the beginning of the series and who he's playing now. But for the one and only time in this series, I actually enjoyed his story. When we start this series, or rather this episode, we see Karate Kid 2 footage towards the end of the film when Chosen and Daniel fight to the death, which leads to Daniel becoming victorious and ending the fight with a honk to the nose, which he saw Miyagi do at the beginning of the episode, or rather movie, to Kreese. Present day, we pick up right where we left off, where Daniel hears a shout. It's his name, and he turns towards the source, and the camera zooms in on him, and it's all dramatic, and he goes, "Chosen," even though it's been a long time since the two of these have seen each other, and there's no way he looks anywhere near the same. So Daniel's reaction should be, "Who are you?" But I suppose that's not really dramatic enough. Daniel looks frightened as Chosen approaches him at the bar. Daniel looks like he's about ready to get into a fight, when Chosen merely bows. Also in this scene, of course, is Kamiko, played by Tamlin Tomita. And I'm not sure if I got into this in the last video or not. I haven't rewatched it, so I have no idea if I've actually discussed some of these things that I realized recently. 1, this actress was recently in the Picard series as a villainous Romulan pretending to be a Vulcan. I straight up didn't recognize her in that role. I'm pretty sure that I did mention that in the last video. But what I didn't mention was the fact that she also appeared, and this is probably the first time I ever saw her. I think I might have seen Karate Kid 2 after this. She also appeared in a Quantum Leap episode, Season 4, Temptation Eyes. Quantum Leap, of course, being the series that I just started taking a look at. In addition to that, she was also in a sci-fi series called Eureka, which I was a big fan of back in the day, and I have considered in the future possibly doing rewatch videos of that series. She played Kim Anderson, who was the love interest of Henry. Again, I did not make the connection between that actress and her appearance in Karate Kid 2. And lastly, she was in 37 episodes of The Good Doctor, where now that I've made all these connections, I totally recognize her when I've watched those episodes. After the credits, we cut to Johnny, who is basically going into Miguel's house to begin therapy so that maybe he can start walking again. He goes into the house and he realizes that he's actually already in physical therapy with a guy that seems very new agey and is definitely the definition of a person that Johnny would not like. Carmen is there and she does not look thrilled to see Johnny. She seems to be tolerating his presence because she still sort of blames him for what happened to Miguel in the first place. Fair or not, Johnny can't keep his displeasure for the methods of this physical therapist and ends up getting back-checked by Carmen privately. She tells him if he can't keep his opinions to himself, then maybe he should just come back later. Johnny apologizes, and we cut to a scene of Kreese and Robbie. Tanner Buchanan isn't that great in the scene, but he's not terrible. He's definitely serviceable. And Martin Cope as Kreese, of course, is just magic. He's just absolutely fun to watch, which is why the scene is so great. Even with Tanner Buchanan not being particularly great in it, because he's once again trying to play the badass, bad boy type. Kreese is talking about how his father, Johnny, Robbie's father, Johnny, to be clear, not Kreese's father, was always a fighter. And he talks about how he drew one year a fighter called Vidal. And I think we heard about Vidal at one point in a last season episode. I don't recall which one. Johnny lost to this fighter. And Kreese knew he was going to be a fighter when Johnny made the decision in his mind that he was never going to let that happen again. Robbie's response to that is, cool story. Try telling someone who would give a shit, which causes Kreese to laugh, because Robbie in that moment is reminding him of Johnny. And in the scene, we get the sense that Kreese, he's a charmer. He has the ability to charm people into doing what he wants. He's very good at manipulating people, which is why he was able to get the following that he does. He reels you in, and then he bees the tough guy. Robbie continues to be unimpressed and says he doesn't need another sensei. And Kreese seems to accept that. And he says, hey look, the Miyagi-Do self-defense BS, that might work in tournaments. But here, in the real world, which is where you're at, you might want to consider striking first. And here's the thing. I've said it before and I'll say it again, because it's been a while. Kreese is not always wrong. He does a lot of things and preaches a lot of things that are inexcusable. But there's a lot of sense to some of the things that Kreese says. He just has a tendency to take things too far. And the whole playing war games with kids thing is a bit much. We cut to Miyagi-Do, who is practicing under the tutelage of Sam, because Daniel is no longer involved and he's currently in Okinawa. We see Chris and Dimitri sparring, and Dimitri ends up on the ground. They are preparing to defend themselves against Cobra Kai when Samantha's mother, Amanda, happens upon the scene. Oh, hello, Amanda. I missed you. That marriage proposal, it's still totally on the table. And at her side is Anthony, who has gotten taller and definitely slimmed out from the last time we saw the guy. Oh yes, and his voice has deepened. He's still a pain in the butt. He's basically parroting his mother as Amanda yells at Sam about being involved in karate, which she expressively forbid. But Sam gets the last word when she says, hey look, if you think karate is the problem, then you just haven't been paying any attention. Incidentally, this is the last time we will see Anthony for the season. We cut to Daniel in Okinawa sitting with Kamiko and Chosen in the most awkward get-together I've ever seen on screen. Daniel asks, "Hey, you married? Do you have kids?" Chosen has neither, and he's being very gruff and to the point. Daniel says, it's okay. It's, good to be a free agent. He makes a Seinfeld reference, which just gets him a blank stare, and Daniel replies, "Well, maybe you're more of a Friends guy." Daniel says he is going to get himself another drink, but Chosen insists that he will get it. And Daniel's like, "Oh, no, it's okay, I'll get it." And then Chosen just straight up yells at him, "No, I will get it!" In a moment that has never failed to make me laugh every time I watch this episode. It's just funny. Because it's the complete opposite of a reaction that you would expect in that situation. You don't expect to get yelled at because you want to go and get a drink, and he wants to get it for you. It's hilarious. Chosen goes and gets a drink, and Daniel is all like, "Kamiko, you gotta help me out here. This is the most awkward conversation of my life. Why is he even here?" And Kamiko reveals that she called him. And Daniel's all like, "Hey, did you forget that he tried to kill us?" Kamiko points out that was a long time ago. And she says that Chosen has changed. But Daniel is pretty skeptical. He says that people like him don't change. But you're wrong, Daniel. People do change. And both the people you have in mind right now, Chosen and Johnny, have both changed. Kamiko, who is ever the unflappable one, is basically like, "Well, I guess you guys have a lot to talk about." Chosen comes back and forcefully puts the glass in front of Daniel, earning Chosen a look I couldn't even describe. It's just another funny little moment that made me giggle. Kamiko says she has to go, which Daniel doesn't want to happen at all. Kamiko asks Chosen if he will show him around town, and Chosen agrees to do so in his gruff manner. And I'm convinced that this entire gruff act and the way he's acting here is a total front, a means to screw with Daniel. It's quite possible that it's also how he interacts with his students, how he acts as a sensei. My opinion is borne out by later in the episode, but we will get there. We cut to Miguel, who's with his physical therapist, who's encouraging him and telling him not to have negative thoughts. The physical therapist says goodbye, and then we see an old Playboy magazine dropped on a fish hook by Johnny. Johnny says that if he wants to see the pictures, all he needs to do is stand. And Miguel is all like, I could just find these on the internet, right? And Johnny makes the claim that they're way hotter on the page than they are on his phone. Miguel tries to rise, but then just ends up falling on the ground. Johnny runs to assist him. And Johnny says they'll give it a minute and try again. But Miguel's not having it. He says, "Doesn't matter if you dangle a PlayStation in front of me. I'm still not going to be able to get up." And he takes off, leaving a slightly disappointed Johnny behind. I gotta say that I'm glad we're back to the core relationship of the series, which Johnny and Miguel definitely are. They are the heart of this series. And it's fun watching Johnny's unconventional techniques. He's a creative guy, really. Cut to Daniel being taken on a tour of lovely Okinawa. He ends up starting to share a story about Miyagi's old sensei. And Daniel starts to share the story himself, because he already knows it, because Miyagi already taught him. And Chosen seems impressed. But then Daniel says, "Miyagi taught me everything he knows." Chosen is all like, so you know everything, huh? And then Daniel starts to hem and haw before Chosen just harumps him and takes off. He tells Daniel, "This way." He's taken to a house where he looks impressed. As he walks around, he realizes this is a dojo. He happens to stumble upon a scroll, which has the secret to the crane technique. Well, that's pretty darn convenient to have that laying around. I'm pretty sure that Chosen set this up, particularly knowing that Daniel had tried or done the crane kick. This gets Daniel interested in the other scrolls, but this draws the ire of Chosen, who says, "You can't touch that. You are a foreigner." And Daniel says, "Hey, we're part of the same karate group." And Daniel responds further that Mr. Miyagi treated him like a son, not a foreigner. He wouldn't keep any secrets from me. And Chosen challenges him on that. "Are you sure about that?" "Well, let's find out," Chosen says menacingly. Meanwhile, Robbie is in the prison library, I guess, looking online at John Kreese. He sees a picture of his father with Kreese. And then he sees a link to a story about a mystery dojo that defanged Cobra Kai, which of course turns out to be Miyagi-Do. And we see Mr. Miyagi pictured with Daniel LaRusso. He checks his email and sees a bunch of emails from Samantha LaRusso. He starts to write to her, when who should unplug the computer but Sean, the guy who's been terrorizing him during his entire lovely little stay. Robbie gets up and says, "Why don't you leave me alone?" And Sean says, "That's never going to happen. You're always going to be looking over your shoulder." They're interrupted by a guard who tells them it's time to go to bed, or whatever. And Sean says, "You got lucky, biatch." We cut to an arcade, which I'm pretty sure is the same arcade that both Daniel and Allie went to, as well as Miguel and Samantha back in the day. Cobra Kai, led by Hawk, is running amok, stealing people's tickets, so on and so forth, and eventually turning up to bother Chris, who is apparently working there to give out prizes. Hawk says that they just want to cash in their well-earned tickets. Yep, okay. And Hawk specifically requests a prize without Chris actually counting the tickets he has to see if he has earned enough. But it doesn't matter, because they just want to rob Chris blind. And okay, here's another crime that they are committing that they could be arrested for, just stealing a bunch of toys and then taking off. But in this land, there is barely any cops at all. Chris texts Samantha, telling her that Cobra Kai is messing with him at work, and she leaps into action. We cut to Johnny and Miguel, and it looks kind of like Johnny is about to have a cookout of some sort. He lights up some charcoal and asks Miguel, "Do you know why they call it hibachi?" Johnny goes on to say, 100 years ago, there was a Chinese village of dairy farmers. When the drought came, they needed to get water from the river. They were laying around waiting for rain when a wise man stuffed a bunch of twigs underneath them to light a fire underneath them. And that is where hibachi was born. And Miguel goes on to poke a bunch of holes in Johnny's story as Johnny leans closer to Miguel. And Miguel is like, "Did you really expect me to fall for that?" And Johnny's like, No, I didn't. I was just hoping to distract you while you're calling out my BS to do this." And it turns out Johnny is lighting Miguel on fire. Or rather, he's putting his shoelaces on fire. And he's grabbing his arms to prevent him from putting it out, hoping that this will cause Miguel to move his legs to put out the fire. Only it does not quite work out that way. We got the inspirational music playing, and it seems like, hey, maybe something's going to happen here. But the only thing that happens is Miguel's leg catches on fire, and Johnny has to put it out. Johnny seems disappointed that this method didn't work. But he's not as disappointed as Miguel is. He asks, well, why didn't that work? Miguel says he should go clean up and probably remove the evidence of the fact that Johnny just tried to light him on fire. I doubt that would put you in the good graces of Carmen if she knew, seeing as you're already at the top of her shit list. We cut to Chosen and Daniel, prepared to fight. They are wearing gis, and the fight begins. And Daniel ends up kind of annoyed because he gets hit in the buttocks. I mean, I'd kind of be annoyed with that too. And Chosen's all like, so, your sensei didn't teach you everything, now did he? And Daniel says, that didn't seem like self-defense to me. Chosen fires back, defense takes on many forms. And then we get a glorious, and I mean absolutely glorious montage of Chosen and Daniel fighting, with a voiceover of them talking back and forth. Chosen brings up that way back in the day, they had to fight off invaders, and the only way to do so was to kill. And at one point Daniel asks, why didn't Miyagi teach me any of this? And Chosen says, perhaps he thought you weren't ready, or you were unable. Yuji Okamoto is 20 kinds of fun in this episode. I just love his delivery and his earlier gruff behavior, and he's about to do a complete 180. But we'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, we see Daniel pretty much get his ass handed to him. Again and again. Until Chosen does some kind of kata form, and he strikes Daniel in the arm mid-fight. His arm goes numb. It becomes completely useless, which startles Daniel. And then he gets struck in another spot, and soon, Daniel can't move. He's completely at the mercy of Chosen. His face is filled with fear. Chosen grabs Daniel by the hair. He picks up his head, and Chosen menacingly says, I have waited a long time for this. Daniel is practically begging for his life, thinking that Chosen is about to kill him. He raises his hand. He does the yeah, and then stops inches away from Daniel's face. Honk! And then he bursts out laughing. Chosen has been waiting a long time just to repeat the joke that Daniel played on him, of sorts, back in Karate Kid 2, honking his nose rather than kill him. And from here, his demeanor completely changes. He's literally a completely different person. The entire gruff act, the menacing act, it was just that, an act. Daniel has regained the use of his limbs, and he asks, what technique was that? It was a secret Miyagi pressure points technique. And Daniel asks him, can you teach me? Before that, Chosen says, if an enemy insists on war, you take away his ability to wage it. And when Daniel asks him to teach him, he seems more than happy to do so. We cut to Johnny, who's making a list of ways that he could potentially help Miguel, which includes LSD and acupuncture. But he ends up tearing up the list in anger. He tosses the paper aside onto his Dell laptop, which he then has inspiration about. He picks up the laptop and plugs it in, because Miguel taught him how to do that, which I think in the last video that this came up, I called BS. There is no way that Johnny is that stupid that he did not realize he needed to plug that in. I'm not buying it. I'm just not. And even if he were, Miguel would have taught him how to do that a long time ago. There's no way he was doing all that stuff with a computer in Season 2 if he didn't know how to plug that in. That computer would have lasted a day at best. But alright, he starts fiddling around with it, and then he hears the sounds of crying. It turns out to be Cameron. Johnny goes to investigate, and he asks if she's okay. She says that she prefers to cry outside so that Miguel won't see how upset she is. She's sorry that he is going through this. He should be out chasing girls and having fun and doing teenage stuff, not relearning how to walk. He just wants to see him smile again. And Johnny has an idea. He asks her to borrow him for a couple hours. Cut to Samantha joining Kreese with Dimitri and a couple of randos. Seriously, I've never seen these kids before in my life. Where have they been this entire time? And they decide to go and confront Cobra Kai, leading to my favorite sequence in this episode. And there's quite a few good sequences in this one. Hawk is busy bullying stuffed animals. That bastard. He kicks a blue thing in the face, causing the other members of Cobra Kai to laugh, which includes Mitch and some more randos. That's not as big of a problem, because Cobra Kai has more students. But Miyagi-Do is much smaller. Samantha and the gang enter, and Hawk asks, "What do you want?" Samantha says menacingly, acting all tough, "Payback!" And then we cut to Robbie. We hear the same music, the suspenseful music. We see him walk by Sean, who raises his hands out like, "Hey, what? What you gonna do, huh?" Robbie walks by him, like he's gonna do nothing. But we already know he's up to something. He walks away to a corner near the computers. He turns around. The music rises. Robbie runs straight for him and kicks Sean in the head. Oh, the fight is on! And from here we cross-cut between Hawk and Miyagi-Do, with Samantha and Dimitri and all of them fighting, and Robbie fighting his tormentors. And it's just glorious. It's a whole lot of fun. The fight seems to be going well for Miyagi-Do, and Robbie is kicking 9 kinds of ass, including a really awesome wall flip. The guards finally end up involved. Took them long enough. Jesus. Meanwhile, Miyagi-Do seems to be doing well in the fight, until Samantha hears the voice of Tori, who enters the room and calls out Samantha, which starts to result in Samantha having a panic attack. She slowly wakes her way into the corner, having flashes of the school fight, of her losing the fight and getting cut by Tori. Well, she ended up winning that fight, but for a while there, she wasn't doing so hot. And Miguel going over the balcony, which led to all of his problems, and Robbie running away. The tides of the fight turn. Miyagi-Do is now losing badly. The music changes. On Robbie's side of things, the cops have finally restrained Robbie and Sean, but they're still trying to go at it. Hawk and Dimitri square off, while Tori taunts Samantha from a distance, trying to find her, trying to draw her out. Dimitri ends up in a precarious situation, Hawk having him down on the ground with his arm behind his back. We cut back to Sean and Robbie on the ground. And we see Robbie develop a little smile on his face. I've been dunking on Tanner Buchanan all season long for not being able to sell his particular arc this season. But he's pretty good in this episode. Maybe because his scenes didn't actually require a lot of acting, and it was mostly on the physical side. I love this little smile on his face that he has here as he basically kicked Sean's butt, or held his own in the fight, and earned Sean's respect. Though I don't think he knows that quite yet. Meanwhile, Dimitri is begging Hawk not to do anything, not to break his arm. He's telling him, hey, it's me, don't do this. But the other members of Cobra Kai are cheering him on, telling him to do it. And that wins out. Hawk breaks Dimitri's arm. The other members of Cobra Kai laugh and high-five Hawk. And Hawk plays along. But he looks a little bit more conflicted. He looks like he's rather disturbed by what he just did. And it's an early indication that Hawk is not exactly happy with this role that he's playing. That he's maybe questioning it a little bit. Cobra Kai leaves, leaving Dimitri to cry in pain on the floor, and Samantha to just plain cry in the corner. We cut back to Okinawa with Chosen and Daniel, who's saying he didn't realize that any of that karate existed, but he gets why Miyagi might not have wanted him to know it. Chosen tells him, your sensei was a man of great honor. I can only hope to be like him. Daniel tries to give him an out. He says, hey, you only did what your teacher taught you to do. But Chosen doesn't want to give him that. Chosen tells him that he felt great shame for what he did to Daniel, to Kimiko. His uncle gave him a second chance, and he took advantage of it. Daniel looks on to the story with empathy, and he tells him that for whatever it's worth, he forgives Chosen. And Chosen says that doesn't mean a great deal. And Daniel laments that not all rivalries can end the same way. Oh, but they can, Daniel. They totally can. Daniel is supposed to meet up with Kimiko, and he invites Chosen along. But Chosen has a class to teach. He tells him how to get back to where he needs to go. Daniel says he would thank him, but he kind of kicked his ass today. So I'll just say goodbye. They bow, and Daniel starts to walk away, but Chosen calls after him. He offers him the scroll for his collection, which I suspect is the Miyagi pressure points technique that he was just shown. They give each other a real bow of respect and depart each other's company. I really hope in season 4 that we see Chosen again, because he was just so much fun in this episode. Even as the kindly old regretful man that he actually is over the gruff one that we saw at the beginning of this episode. We cut to Johnny and Miguel. Miguel is being wheeled through some kind of hall, and they're going to a concert, a Dee Snider concert, for the record. And he's actually played by Dee Snider of Twisted Sister fame, in case you're not aware of him. To Miguel, it looks like a scary place. Johnny gets to the front door, and the guard is like, nice try, come back when you're 21. And Johnny tells him he's not going to make it to 21. He's a Make-A-Wish kid. He's going to die of cancer, is basically what he's implying, before he turns 21. And Miguel, who catches on, does a very bad job of trying to sell this. He does a little cough thing to indicate that he's dying. It's pretty unconvincing to me anyway. But, nevertheless, the guard lets him in. We enter the concert, which is loud and fun, and people are jamming away. And Miguel asks, how is this part of my physical therapy? And Johnny says, it's not. He grabs out some beers and said, forget about all that. Have some fun. Miguel takes the beer happily, raises it into the air and yells, yeah! And we cut to a less happy scene with Samantha at the hospital where Dimitri is. Amanda comes in, yelling at Sam, saying, hey, didn't I tell you no more karate? What do I have to do to get through to you? But she stops herself when she sees that Samantha is really, really upset. She tells her that they broke Dimitri's arm, and she did nothing to stop it. We cut to Robbie and Sean. Robbie asks him, why didn't you talk? And Sean says, I'm not no Stitch. And Robbie says, neither is he. And now there's a mutual respect. So, let me point out here. John Kreese gave Robbie some advice. Robbie took this advice, and it actually improved his situation. Like I said, Kreese isn't always wrong. I question a lot of his motives, I question a lot of his actions, but Kreese is not always wrong. Some of his advice is actually good advice. Some of his life lessons are good lessons. And that's really what the whole series is about, really. Nothing is black and white. Nothing is gray. You know, I actually said that wrong. It's not black and white. It's gray. Even though, on the whole, I don't see Kreese as a force for good, even though he thinks he is. He legit thinks he is helping out his students. I believe he has Johnny's best interests at heart. He sees what he's done as tough love. He sees himself as preparing his students for a world that will not be kind to them, that will be downright cruel. Ultimately, I know that Kreese's approach is the wrong one. And the reason I know that is because of his students, the older ones, in Johnny and his friends, how their lives didn't exactly turn out great, listening to Kreese's teachings. Back at the concert, Johnny and Miguel take a selfie. Johnny wants a copy of the picture, and Miguel tells him he'll tag him. Johnny, of course, doesn't know what that means. He says that he'll be able to access it on Facebook, but Johnny says he threw his phone away. And Miguel points out, well, okay, but you can get that picture on, or go to Facebook on the computer that you still have. As the music goes on, Johnny is in the moment. He looks down, and Miguel is tapping his foot to the music. Johnny points it out, and they both celebrate together. Cut to Daniel meeting up with Kimiko and a mysterious girl that he doesn't quite recognize. Kimiko ends up asking, where's Chosen? And Daniel says, he had to teach a class. Hopefully he takes it easier on them than he did on me. Kimiko laughs and says, I hope you both learned something from each other. And Daniel, smiling, says he thinks he did. And that was probably Kimiko's plan from the start. Daniel finally notices the other girl and asks, is this a friend of yours? And Kimiko points out that it's actually a friend of theirs. As it turns out, this is the same girl that Daniel rescued in Karate Kid 2. Same actress, as it turns out, too. She's Tracy Togachi, and she only has 12 credits to her name. And it's really weird because her credits are scattered. She has some recent appearances in some TV shows, along with this one. As it turns out, Yuna, the girl's name, is about to save Daniel. Because she happens to work for the very company that Daniel was trying to get to continue to have an agreement with. And that is how Daniel manages to save his business. Cut to Amanda, who is entering Cobra Kai. John Kreese comes out and says they're closed, unless she would like to enroll her kid. But Amanda isn't interested in that. She wants to confront him about what a couple of his students did. Kreese puts 2 and 2 together and realizes this is the wife of Daniel. He goes on to say, "Oh, you're feisty. I like that. I like that a lot." He doesn't even get to finish that, but that would be what Kreese would be about to say. He doesn't get to finish because Amanda just straight up slaps him in the face and tells him, "I don't give a shit what you like. I'll be shutting you down if it's the last thing you do." She mentions the police during all this, and by the way, none of this was particularly smart on Amanda's part. She doesn't realize that Kreese thinks 3 steps ahead. We cut to Carmen, Miguel, and Johnny all celebrating the fact that Miguel has regained movement in his foot. Johnny ends up telling Carmen, "Hey, it was all the kid. I told you he was a fighter." And he turns to Miguel, or rather looks down at him and says, "Don't get too cocky though. We still gotta get you out of that wheelchair." Well, it looks like, Johnny, you just won her back over. Johnny goes into his house, turns on his computer, and goes to Facebook, where he sees the picture that he was tagged in. He's looking around when he notices a friend request. Oh, what's this? Why, it seems to be a friend request from Ali Sharber, or however you pronounce her last name now. Cheesy 80s music begins, and then credits. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the episode. A fantastic episode all the way around. The acting, the energy, everything about it was great. The fight scenes. I even enjoyed Robbie in this episode, which I haven't all season long, and after this I'm probably not going to say that again, honestly. I'm not sure when I'm doing the next episode exactly, whenever it is I have time. I am going to finish up my Cobra Kai Season 3 commitment. That is all that I am committed to. Whether I do the other episodes or not really kind of depends. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Corman Productions Facebook page. You can buy something from the Corman Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.